Part 2 of The Forgotten Brother, Chapter 1, Shadow Town. Logan's motorcycle sped across the desolate highway, its headlights cutting through the fading dusk as the wind howled. He followed the location of the news report to a little, abandoned town hidden in the woods, untouched by time and with shadows that lasted longer than they should. As he approached the outskirts, a shiver of recognition ran up his spine. This was not his first visit here. Perhaps not in this life, but in one hidden deep amid the fractured bits of his history. There was too much silence in town. No traffic. There are no pedestrians. Only the faint glimmer of neon signs illuminated the few establishments that were open. Logan parked his bike at a dimly lit pub, which appeared to be the only place alive in this abandoned town. There was an unusual tension in the air inside. Several men sat at the counter, hunched over their drinks and whispering softly. The sorrowful hum of an old country tune played on a jukebox echoed against the wooden walls. Logan entered, his boots clicking on the worn floor. Logan approached the bartender, a large man with graying hair and weary eyes who paused. While washing a glass, the bartender commented, "You're not from around here." Logan answered, "Nope, just passing through." "I heard about the incidents that occurred." The bartender's hand grasped the glass more tightly. A newspaper with a front-page headline about the terrible murder caught his eye as it lay on the counter. "We don't talk about that," the bartender said, his voice low. "Bad things happen to folks who ask too many questions." Logan leaned in and grinned. "Lucky for me, I've been dealing with bad things my whole life." The door behind Logan creaked open before the bartender could respond. A tall, broad-shouldered figure with a fitting black coat entered. Logan felt it, the obvious presence of someone watching him, but did not immediately turn around. He turned slowly. And there he was, the newspaper man. The hair is short and reddish blonde. Sharp qualities. His goatee was the same color as Logan's. His calculating, dark eyes met Logan's. "You should have stayed away, brother." The comments broke Logan's heart. "My brother?" There was an unusual silence in the bar. The men behind the counter stiffened up. Even the bartender took a step back, as if he had detected something unusual in the air. Logan paid close attention to the man. There was some similarity. However, the Matthew he remembered was a terrified child who had been buried in the ashes of their family's past. But this man was powerful. Power, as if time had transformed them into something they were not. "Didn't think you'd recognize me," Logan said quietly. "What has it been?" "In 200 years. Matthew felt a smirk tugging on the corner of his mouth. "I've never forgotten." "However, you did." The bartender and the other men moved away quietly, as if they sensed danger approaching. Logan twitched his fingers at his side. His instincts directed him to fight or flee. He was not leaving, however. Not until he became aware of the reality. "What the hell happened to you, Matt?" Although Matthew's smile widened, it lacked warmth. "I died," he whispered. "And then I came back." Chapter 2. The reality that upended everything. Chapter 1 recap. Logan's real name is James Hallett, and he just saw a man on television who resembles his long-lost younger brother Matthew, whom he hasn't encountered in nearly 200 years. Logan, startled by the revelation, promptly rides his motorcycle to investigate Matthew's surprise reappearance. However, before we leave, let us revisit the night that changed everything. Chapter 2. The night everything fell apart. The truth that rocked everything. 1853 Canada. The estate loomed in eerie silence as the cold wind howled outside. Matthew, 5 years old, clung to his blanket, his tiny body quivering from the muffled yelling that filled the passageways. Despite having previously heard his parents argue, something felt different this time. He cautiously slid out of bed, his bare feet creaking silently on the hardwood floor. He pulled the door open, and it creaked softly. He paused just before the second-floor landing, tiptoeing down the corridor to look through the wooden banisters. He spotted it right then. Thomas Creed, the family's groundskeeper, stood in the big foyer downstairs, brandishing an ancient rifle. Even from where Matthew stood, he could smell the stench of alcohol that clung to the man like a second skin as his body shook slightly. His mother shouted, "Put the gun down, Thomas," in a scared voice. His father, John Howlett, had hurried down the stairs and positioned himself between Thomas and his marriage. Then someone fired a shot. The boom of sound nearly pushed Matthew down. With horrified eyes, he grasped the railing as he watched his father collapse to the ground, blood collecting beneath him. Mother grabbed her mouth in fright as she gasped. She did not scream, however. She took her time reaching his father's side. All she did was stand there. James' face wrenched in misery as he dashed down the stairs. With quivering hands, he dropped to his knees next to their father. Then it happened. 3 bone-like claws protruded from his knuckles as Matthew observed his brother's hands twisting unnaturally out of the shadows. The boy's respiration became laborious. What was James up to? A scream followed. Matthew shuddered at the sound, which was raw and full of rage and grief. Before anyone could react, James lunged forward and sank his freshly developed claws into Thomas's belly. Everything degenerated into pandemonium. And in the midst of the commotion, Thomas spoke. Despite his harsh tone, his remarks cut through the air like a blade. "He isn't your dad." "Quiet." James paused. As his sibling turned to look at his father's lifeless body, Matthew noted his brother's perplexity and claw retractions. He looked back at Thomas, then at their mother, who averted his gaze. She was aware. She'd known all along. James' biological father wasn't John Howlett. James also knew. Pushpin family breaking moment. James' breathing was hard as he lurched backward. At last, his mother gave him a look, but it was cold and unrecognizable, lacking warmth. She said, "What are you?" No harm could ever reach the depths of the words. James' jaw was so stiff that Matthew was afraid it might crack, and his entire body tensed. He turned and bolted after that. They fled the house, escaped from reality, deserted the household that had abandoned him in one night. Victor lagged behind. Matthew was ready to shout at them and dash after his siblings when his mother grabbed his shoulder and stopped him. She said, "You will forget about them," in a harsh tone. "They have left now. Additionally, they will never return." She was mistaken. Matthew's brothers would search for him nearly 200 years later. Fire Chapter 3, The Background Man Chapter 3, The Background Man. Logan, or James as he was formerly known, had retrieved his lost memories 3 weeks ago. After 3 weeks, everything from his past came with a vengeance. The suffering, the treachery, the reality. Despite Logan's best efforts to move on, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And that sensation hit him like a kick in the stomach today. A relaxed afternoon turns into a horror. Saturday afternoon was slow. There was silence throughout the mansion. Some youngsters were playing outside with their friends, taking advantage of the few peaceful minutes. But Logan was not comfortable. With a chilled root beer in hand, not because he wanted one, but because Charles wouldn't let him keep booze on the property, he sat in the living room, aimlessly browsing through TV channels. Choose a different channel. Click. One more worthless program. Then he noticed it. After a brief while with the image flashing over the screen, he clicked to the next channel out of habit. However, his stomach turned. Something did not feel right. He paused. Then he flopped back fast, drawing a harsh breath. So there it was. A historic face. A live news crew discovered the house's owner dead after covering a horrific crime scene. Standing in front of the crime scene, the reporter told the camera how savage the attack was. Logan, however, was not paying attention. Not even her words registered in his head. Because there was a man standing in the background, surrounded by detectives and police officers. A man in a smart black suit stands close to 2 other males dressed identically. Everything about him felt familiar, including his short reddish blonde hair, sharp features, and goatee, which matched the color of his hair. Logan's eyes narrowed. He strained for breath. It's not possible. Logan hadn't seen that face before. He had only been a young boy. A kid. Logan had left a child behind. According to logic, this youngster should have died about 2 centuries ago. But he was here, alive, standing against a murder scene backdrop. Logan tightened his grip on the container, causing the metal to crumble beneath his fingertips. Matthew, he said to himself. The crucial choice. Logan drew closer, his heart beating, and searched the TV screen for additional information. Where did the event take place? What was the duration of the event? Who died? The news ticker, which contained the specifics of the incident, appeared at the bottom of the screen. A little village is located approximately 300 kilometers away. He only wanted to know that. Logan instantly reached for the remote and turned the television off. Before he knew it, he was standing. He needed to leave. Right now, he saw Charles in the hallway on his way to the door. There's something that has come up, Logan said quietly. I'll return in a week. Charles did not ask him any questions. Logan knew better than to interrupt him with that expression. Logan hurriedly left the mansion without saying anything else. The adventure begins. Logan strode into the dark garage as if instinctively. After a lifetime of never staying in one place for too long, his old go bag was already packed when his hand found it. He was riding his motorcycle in seconds, the engine roaring to life beneath him. He vanished the moment the tires touched the ground. As he sped down the road, the wind rushed past him, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the image on the screen. That individual. Look at that face. He believed the child was lost forever. How could Matthew still be alive after so long? What was the motive for his attendance at a crime scene? Was he the victim? Or did he kill another person? Logan wanted to believe that this was a mistake. It was a coincidence. However, he knew better in his heart. There were no coincidences in his life. Furthermore, if Matthew returns, then something far more significant occurred. Logan was keen to uncover the exact nature of it. Fire Chapter 4, The Path to Truth. Mystery and Suspense, Family Secrets, Supernatural Betrayal. Chapter 4, The Path to Veracity. Logan's thoughts were as swift as the bike beneath him as he sped down the highway, the rumble of the motorcycle ringing through the quiet air. He felt the frigid night air rush by, yet it did not extinguish the fire in his chest. He had seen his brother. The man looked like Matthew. However, such an arrangement was not feasible. Logan had not seen Matthew in 2 centuries since he was a toddler. And yet, there he was, standing in the background of the crime scene. He had the same angular features. They shared the same striking hairstyle. The only difference between them was their age. He'd attained adulthood. How? Was he, like Logan and Victor, cursed with extraordinary longevity and resistance to time? Was there another component at work? Logan tightened his grip on the handlebars as he gained speed. The murder had occurred in Blackridge, a peaceful small town with nothing remarkable about it. Logan, on the other hand, had a gut feeling that this was more than just another crime after reading the news item. He had something to do with it. A quiet town with sinister secrets. Logan arrived in Blackridge 2 hours later, and the town seemed eerily calm, despite the streetlights. The majority of the structures were old, and the town appeared to be locked in a time warp, perfect for concealing a secret that should have died long ago. Logan walked over to the crime scene after parking his bike a few blocks away. Even though police tape was being used to block off the house, he knew it wasn't any ordinary residence. It got left behind. So, why would someone break in? More importantly, why would they murder someone inside a home that was supposed to be empty? Logan felt a chill, but not from the cold. It was a setup. Matthew had something to do with it. A dark shadow. Logan observed the show from the shadows. Even after the officials had left, there was a lingering odor of blood and something else, something strange. His heightened senses detected something unusual. Steps. There was another individual there. Logan stiffened, his sense getting sharper. He was not by himself. A shadow crept between the nearby trees, signaling a sudden burst of activity. Logan did not think twice. He trailed behind. The individual walked hurriedly, as if conscious that they were being watched. Logan's heart was pounding. This was Matthew's chance to finally get answers if he was this person. Logan surged forward, grabbing the figure's shoulder and pulling them back as he closed the gap. It wasn't Matthew, however. A black-clad woman spun around, attempting to defend herself with narrowed, piercing green eyes. Logan pinned her wrist after narrowly evading a strike to the ribs. "Who the hell are you?" Logan hissed. Despite being apprehended, the woman's respiration remained consistent. She simply grinned, without flinching or struggling. "You really don't remember, do you?" she asked. Logan squinted his eyes. That voice felt familiar to him. Unresolved business and buried memories. Something flashed, a recollection buried deep within him. A kid, a female, a century-old vow. Logan's grip became firmer. "Start talking." The woman grinned. "Logan, you are running late. It's 200 years late." His blood froze. She was familiar with him. She would have recognized Matthew if she had known him. "Where is he?" Logan issued a demand. The woman's head tilted. "It depends. Do you want to continue misleading yourself, or do you want the truth?" Logan stayed mute. He did not have to. Everything that mattered was the truth, and he was ready to face it no matter how bleak. To be continued. The Shadows of the Past Fire. Chapter 5, a synopsis of previous chapters. After his memory returns, Logan discovers that his long-lost younger brother, Matthew, may still be alive. The news depicts an enigmatic figure who resembles Matthew in the background of a crime scene. Logan takes his motorcycle to the village where the tragedy occurred, anxious to learn the truth. Chapter 5, The Past's Shadows. Logan drove down the lonely highway. The wind shouted in his face. As the sky darkened, the world became more orange and deep blue-colored. He followed his instincts without the use of a GPS. The crime location in the news article was located in a small, abandoned village. Surrounded by deep woodlands and narrow roads. It was a hidden, quiet, and covert location, not the type of area where people happened to pass by. "Why are you here, Matthew?" Logan muttered into his ear. "Why now?" He believed his younger brother had vanished for nearly 2 millennia. He and Victor searched for him after the Civil War, but fire had destroyed the house. The townspeople reported that there were no survivors. But where had Matthew been all this time, assuming he had survived and escaped? More importantly, why has he never returned? Logan landed in the hidden town shortly after midnight. Old-fashioned streetlights flickered against the night breeze, illuminating the streets. A rundown diner with a faded neon sign had his motorcycle parked outside. The interior was almost empty, save for an elderly man sipping coffee in the distant corner and a weary waitress tidying up the counter. Logan walked in, his boots reverberating on the hardwood floor. The waitress, carefully chewing gum, looked up. "Are you traveling, or are you trying to find someone?" Logan did not think twice. "A murder occurred recently here. I need to discover more about the man in the suit, his short beard, sharp features, and red hair." The old man in the corner has stopped drinking, but the waitress did not worry. "We don't discuss them." Her voice was harsh. "It's best if neither of you does." Logan's eyes narrowed. "Them?" The woman leaned against the counter and cleaned her hands with a rag. The men were dressed in suits. They arrive and leave. Nobody challenges them. Nobody ought to. Logan experienced a chill down his spine as she spoke. Matthew was part of something larger than himself. Logan asked for more, but the elderly man in the corner cleared his throat first. "You ought to check out the chapel on the hill if you're searching for answers." The chapel. Logan gazed outside the window. Beyond the town, a towering structure loomed out against the dark sky. The ancient wooden church seemed deserted, barely standing. Logan suspected it wasn't. He gave the old man a nod. "Thank you." The hilltop chapel. Logan was a quick mover. He stepped outside and noticed that the air was heavier and thicker. For years, his senses had served as his compass, but now they were warning him, "You're walking into something dangerous." Nonetheless, he continued to advance. Dead trees flanked the dusty path to the chapel, their gnarled branches casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. After a brief pause, Logan approached the enormous oak doors and pushed them open. There was too much silence in the chapel. Dust particles wafted through the air under the faint light of the candles near the altar. Except for a solitary man standing at the front, the rows were empty. A man clothed in a suit. Red hair. Sharp qualities. A beard. Logan's throat clenched with each breath. Matthew. He stood in front of his younger brother for the first time in nearly 2 centuries, facing the past head-on. Matthew slowly turned, his expression unreadable. He seemed unsurprised. He seemed to have been anticipating Logan. You finally found me, Matthew said in a very controlled tone. Logan's heart raced as he took a step forward. You're alive. Matthew gave a little smile. So are you. Too many years and unanswered questions prompted them to remain silent for an extended period of time. Why didn't you come back? Logan issued a demand. We looked for you, Victor and me. We thought you were no longer there. Matthew's eyes became slightly melancholy. Because I had no reason to return. Logan balled his fists. No reason. Matthew cried, You left me, with a knife-sharp tone. You and Victor left me with her. What she did to me is unbeknownst to you. What she made me become. Logan felt a chill run through his body. What are you talking about? Matthew approached, his eyes sparkling in the small candlelight. Logan, you weren't the only one to change that evening. But as you and Victor departed, I remained behind. She also ensured that I would never be the same. Logan detected a change in the atmosphere. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something about Matthew made him uncomfortable. His sister was still alive. But had he changed from the Matthew they had known? The air grew unnaturally chilly, and the candles flickered quickly before Logan could react. Matthew grinned again, but it wasn't the smile of a long-lost sibling. It was something else. Chapter 6. The Unsettling History. Logan's motorcycle cut through the night like a ghost in the black as he raced along the empty highway, the wind howling. He kept recalling the news report, the man with the sharp features and red hair standing calmly in the background of a murder scene. Matthew. He needed to be the one. However, how? How had his younger brother, who had been missing for almost 200 years, reappeared in such a terrible setting? As he approached the town, he tightened his grip on the handlebars. The incident was not an accident. He needed to find out. The town that did not tell. Logan pulled up to a small bistro just outside of town. The neon sign wavered, casting ominous shadows across the parking lot. The place was nearly abandoned, except for a few locals and a waitress who didn't seem to mind that it was late. He shook off the chill and entered. As he approached the counter, he overheard faint whispering from a nearby booth. I told you it wasn't natural. The house was doomed from the start. And the man they found? His visage was altered, as if he had seen something before dying away. Logan pinched his ears. He took a seat and pretended to go through the menu. But he couldn't tear his gaze away from the 2 men who were whispering about the crime. They say the man in black was there before the cops even arrived. Are you referring to him? Who has red hair? Yes, because he has previously been spotted in similar locations. Logan stiffened his jaw. Matthew was the one. It must have been. He was shocked out of his trance when the waitress approached. She glanced at him with interest and asked, What can I get you? Logan murmured, Just coffee, his mind still racing. A shadow in the mist. While the coffee was still brewing, Logan caught a glimpse of a man standing across the street. Tall and unmoving, observing. Logan could see the cold eyes, strong jawline, and reddish hair, even in low light. Matthew. Logan leaped out of his chair, ignoring the waitress's cries. After exiting the diner, he dashed outside into the humid night air. However, the ghost had vanished by the time he reached the street. He possessed acute hearing. 3 blocks away, he could hear a man's heartbeat through a shut door. But Matthew? Not even a clue. He was certain of one thing. It wasn't just about hiding Matthew. He wanted Logan to be aware of his presence. The forgotten house. Logan arrived at the murder scene after the area had been cleaned, but the odor of death remained. The home appeared uninhabited, with worn walls and shattered windows. It appears to have been abandoned long before the murder occurred. Logan entered. His weight made the hardwood floor moan. He could see the remains of the crime scene, including dried blood, police tape, and a shattered lamp on the ground. Then he noticed it. I placed one white envelope on the mantel with care. There were no fingerprints or dust on it. He'd been left with it. He approached, paused briefly, and then opened it. There was a photograph inside. A photograph of Matthew, Victor, and him. Captured in 1845. Logan held the image carefully. There was more to the scene than just coincidence. It was a message. His heart pounding, he flipped the image over to read the scrawled words. Brother, I have never forgotten you. However, did you neglect me? Reverberations of the past. Behind him, a floorboard creaked. Logan turned around, body tense and claws unsheathed. Nothing. He could sense it, though. A presence. Something seemed out of place. Then a voice gentle, almost nostalgic. Logan, you're still as careless as ever. Logan's throat clenched with each breath. Matthew emerged from the darkness. His face was unreadable, yet his outfit was impeccable. However, his eyes did not belong to a missing sibling. They were something else. Something older. Something is waiting. Logan moved slowly. Matthew, what have you turned into? Matthew just grinned. Brother, people change over time. However, not everyone experiences beneficial changes. Logan's spine tingled from the cold. He wasn't sure if he'd found his brother or something imitating him for the first time in decades. Chapter 7, The Shadows of the Past, is 700 words long and designed for YouTube engagement. Logan's motorcycle screamed through the frigid night air, and the road stretched ahead of him eternally. On the horizon, a faint light from a little town flickered. His head was racing faster than his bicycle. Was Matthew there? If so, how did he manage to survive for so long? And why had he reappeared unexpectedly, embroiled in a brutal murder? He paused briefly to check the news before turning into a dimly lit gas station just outside of town. It was only a few kilometers from the crime location. He had to see it personally. Logan inhaled deeply, revved the engine, kicked the stand, and disappeared into the night. The Secret's house. Logan had the ability to find what others had overlooked, even after clearing the murder scene long ago. The house loomed before him, dead and deserted, but with an unusual, almost oppressive aura. Something did not feel right. The air was dense and heavy, consisting of more than just dust. His intuition compelled Logan to return. However, he had never been cautious. He entered. His boots creaked on the floor. The fragrance of blood, something more metallic, combined with the scent of aged wood. He scanned the room with keen eyes. Someone had turned over the furniture. The glass was smashed. There were signs of difficulty. However, there was no clear indication of what had actually happened. Then he noticed an unusual. One chair is unoccupied. The chaos around it did not affect its perfect placement. There was a letter on it. The envelope bore his name on it. Logan, the dead's letter. He proceeded slowly and deliberately, pulling it apart. There was one page inside, written in accurate, practically faultless handwriting. You have been looking for me, but I found you first. We have unfinished business, brother. Come alone. There was no signature present. Logan didn't need one, though. Matthew. Thus, it was indeed him. However, the letter was both an invitation and a message. Or a trap. The unsettling reality. Logan sensed a presence before he could respond. Something inside of him paused for the first time in a long time, sending a chilly shiver up his spine. He was not by himself. Logan turned carefully and noticed a shadow in the far corner of the room. You're late, someone muttered. Logan stiffened. The voice was deep and recognized, yet it seemed older and colder. Matthew. He went forward, emerging from the shadows. Logan no longer recognized the terrified youngster as a man, strong, cunning, and completely unintelligible. Logan was most alarmed by his eyes, despite the faint light that showed his vivid red hair. They were mistaken. Dark, empty, not natural. Logan quietly remarked, "You should be dead." Matthew grinned. "As were you. It's funny how things work out." They remained silent for a long time. "What happened to you?" Logan inquired at last. Matthew cocked an amused head. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Although he was caustic, there was resentment behind the surface. Time's weight. Matthew finally said, "You left me." Logan's eyes narrowed. "I didn't know you were alive." Matthew laughed. "What if you had? Would you have returned?" Logan stayed mute. He was unaware. The shame was overwhelming and came quickly. For decades, if not centuries, he believed Matthew had died. He had a gut sense, though, that if he had really sought for him, he would have found him. And now, 2 millennia later, Logan stood before his brother, and he knew something awful. Matthew had changed. "Because I needed to know if you were still the same man who left me behind." "I'm going to give you a choice, brother. I don't walk away from family." Matthew's grin dimmed. "Then don't make me turn you into an enemy." They were silent for a moment. Then, like a ghost, Matthew vanished into the night in a flash of movement. Logan stood by himself, his fists tight and his heart racing. This was not the end of it. Not even close. The Truth Hidden in the Shadows teaser for Part 3. Logan's search for his missing sibling was not what he had expected. Logan no longer recognizes Matthew as the boy he once knew, even if he is still alive. What happened during their 2 centuries apart? What? Part 3 dives deeper. Is it too late, or can Logan save his brother? The following chapter, in which the past is not buried, should not be missed. Light bulb life lesson, remorse and redemption's shadows. Life is full of regrettable moments, missed opportunities. Although the past does not define us, it shapes who we are. It requires mental and physical strength to confront unresolved grief, uncover the truth, and reconcile with family. Within ourselves and not with others. What decisions will we make with the remaining time?